Social emotional learning in the classroom, in the music classroom, is really having a big moment in music education. And I am so here for it because social and emotional needs, those are real needs of our students. They need to have successful social and emotional learning abilities and skills to succeed in our classroom as well as outside of our classroom. If you're a general music teacher, and I'm thinking if you are kindergarten through sixth grade, if you're a general music teacher and you just want ideas on practical resources to practically navigate social and emotional learning in your classroom, things that you can use tomorrow in your classroom, next week, practical, realistic, and also super connecting to social emotional learning. No worries, because I'm going to provide you with my five favorite things that I share with teachers all the time. Things that I personally love as resources in the classroom for social and emotional learning. So let's check those out. Now, before I talk about these five resources and why I love them so much and how I would connect them to social and emotional learning, I want to say that just to make your life a little bit easier, I did plop links to those resources in the description of this video right below. Feel free to use those links to access those resources directly. And now let's talk a little bit about social and emotional learning and why these resources are so connected to social and emotional learning. So when I think about social and emotional learning, I'm thinking about five different areas that teachers can use as ways to connect to social and emotional learning. Again, these are the real life skills that children need to be successful in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And these five categories are things like self awareness, social awareness, responsible decision making, self management, and relationship skills. So it is not just feelings, although that is certainly a part of it. It is actually much broader than that. And so the reason why I chose these resources, the reason why these are things that I grab myself time and time again when someone is asking me for something that they could do tomorrow, is because it hits on one or more of these five areas, these five components of social and emotional learning skills that we're trying to foster within our students. We are doing things all the time in the music classroom that foster these five components. But I also think about the fact that there are things that we can do. There is repertoire that we could be using. There are materials that we can be using in the classroom that really help spell it out for our students. If we use them the right way, we can really spell out those social and emotional learning skills that we're trying to foster within our students. So let's get into those resources. Okay, so starting with my very first resource that I highly recommend for social and emotional learning in the elementary general music classroom is I Want My Hat Back by John Klassen. I love this story. It's about a bear who can't find his hat and he is asking around all over the place. Where is my hat? I can't find my hat. It is his favorite hat. He can't find it. He's really frustrated. And this is something that our students experience a lot, right? Losing things and where could it be? He later finds out that the hat was actually stolen by a rabbit, or I should say, at least he believes that the rabbit has stolen his hat. And he has made some decisions about that based on what he has learned. And so I love the real connections of honesty and consequences and decisions that you can make that maybe have a positive or negative impact. And what might you do differently if that were you? I love that real connection with students. I think that they have a lot of opportunities where they can make the right decision or the wrong decision. And here is an example of a bear that might not have made the best decision. So I love this resource. I highly recommend that you include this in your classroom. Moving on to my second favorite book of all time for social and emotional learning in the general music classroom is actually one of two books that I'm going to talk about here, written by Gaia Cornwall. The first one being Jabari Jumps. I love this story so much. It's about Jabari. He is trying to jump off this really high diving board, which really is kind of scary. And he is procrastinating. he doesn't do it, he's worried about it, he's just really overcome with fear. And it takes you on this journey of overcoming that fear and what ultimately happens at the end when he does jump off the diving board and what are the confidence building things that now he has because he made that choice to take a risk. Such a wonderful story for those social and emotional learning components, those areas of SEL. I love the idea musically of high versus low. What might it sound like if somebody were to jump off a diving board? Let's use, doing some vocal exploration. Oh, plop. And then going down, down, down into the water. There's so many wonderful things musically that you can do with this book. I can't highly recommend this one enough. Okay, so sticking with our character of Jabari, we also have this second book. It's called Jabari Tries. It's all about Jabari who is trying to build an airplane that is going to go so far, and it doesn't. He fails time and time again. He gets frustrated. Very realistic, right? Because our students experience this all the time. And it talks about how he manages those emotions, how he decides to persevere, push forward, and then ultimately, what happens when he does decide to persevere? He succeeds in this. And again, it builds up those skills within Jabari of self efficacy, solving problems, teamwork, just wonderful social and emotional learning components that we want to embed with our students. Musically speaking, I love the idea of vocal exploration. I've actually had students create paper airplanes as their experiments for how far they can fly a paper airplane, and then do vocal exploration for the airplane path. How far did it go? When did it land? What would that sound like? And so that's just one example of musical, experiences that you can embed in the story. But Jabari is back here again with Jabari Tries, and I recommend this one as well. I absolutely love it. Okay, for my upper elementary folk, and I mean those of you who are teaching fourth, fifth, and sixth grade general music, this book here to me hits so many of those must haves when I include children's literature in the music classroom. I think it's just so important that not only are we integrating social and emotional learning, but we are also integrating true stories. And this is exactly that. This is building an orchestra of hope how Fabio Chavez taught children to make music from trash. This is a real story. You can look this up, Fabio Chavez. And essentially, what he did was he realized that there were students, there were children who didn't have any of their basic needs where he was living, and he really thought that they would benefit from being a part of a wonderful orchestra, but there were no instruments, and so he actually went to junkyards and places that collected trash and worked with people that he knew in his community to create an actual orchestra made out of things that he found out of trash. He built all of these instruments. They put on concerts. It's just a wonderful example of social justice and action in music education. I love it so much. And one of my favorite things about this resource is just this idea that students have the possibility to make real positive change. And questions that I would use to guide social and emotional learning development with students in the fourth through sixth grade would be things like, have you ever had an experience where you haven't had just the things that you needed to participate in something? Was there a time where there wasn't any sporting equipment, or you didn't have the right shoes for something, or you needed a resource, gosh, even at school, you didn't have the right supplies for that? Like, how would that feel to be somebody who didn't have something that you actually needed to participate in an activity that you wanted to do? I love this book because I know that many of us already like to integrate building instruments, talk about instrument classification. So things like chordophones, membranophones, those kinds of things already in our fourth, fifth, and sixth grade general music classes. This to me is a really good extension of that type of unit that might be happening already, specifically with that lens of access and equity and inclusion. And again, the social and emotional learning components, persevering, setting a goal, doing everything you can to achieve it. Such a real life experience to share with your students. And I think it's just a wonderful resource to include in your class. So before I end with my last resource, I just wanted to say that if you love this channel, if you like what I'm trying to do here, consider throwing your support behind it with my Buy Me a Coffee link below. If you're somebody who is looking for workshops in this area, I give tons of workshops in all of these things that I'm sharing about. I will plop a link to my website in the description as well. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to hit me up at ezafini@longy.edu. And now on to the final resource. Okay, so the very last thing that I absolutely love. I I love these so much. You're probably going to hear about these so often, so many times on this YouTube channel. Ways to integrate social and emotional learning into the classroom is actually not through a book, but through a very student-centered approach to literacy in general, which is StoryCubes. I love story cubes so much. The idea of story cubes is that students roll the die and then they write stories based on how the die rolls. So if they roll 3 die and we have a bee, we have a sword, and I don't know, we have clouds, they have to write a story that includes a bee, a sword, and some clouds. When I integrate social and emotional learning into this, my mandates for students are that when they write a story, whether it's in a group or it's by themselves, however I do that, I insist that they include at least one of those 5 areas of social and emotional learning. It has to be a part of the storyline. So they get to choose. They get to choose everything about that. Musically speaking, I also say, wonderful. On top of that, you're also going to include something musical. Maybe I want you to include something that involves dynamics, for example, or phrasing, or musical form, or somewhere in your story, I want to hear this specific articulation and I want it to fit what is happening in the story. This is pretty awesome. 5th graders, 6th graders, they love this free range on what to do. They come up with some of the most creative stories ever. And there's just lots of opportunity for freedom and creativity and connecting to all 4 of those artistic processes that we're trying to include in our music classroom. So I do love story cubes. There are so many sets. I have the classic set, which is the one that I showed you here. I have Voyages, I have Harry Potter, I have Star Wars, I have actions. There's so many sets. I will plop in the description of this video my favorite sets, the ones that students really ask for time and time again, and the ones that teachers that I work with, I know they have success with those sets as well. So, story cubes are wonderful. I hope you consider giving them a try, and I can't wait to hear how it all works for you. Okay, so that is it for today. I hope that at least one of these 5 things is useful for you. I hope to hear how it goes for you. Let me know how it's going, what you really liked. I would love to hear it all. And in the meantime, between now and the next time that I see you, I hope that you do everything that you can to teach to a different beat. Bye, folks.